Missionary Baptist Church. The date for the time for the event is still TBD, but for now, just save the date and we'll be sending out a flyer shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Latifa.
Good evening. I just wanted to mention that we, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We extended the date to apply to be on the Community Advisory Committee at Urban Health. So you have until the 11th of November. So if you intended to apply and you haven't, you have an opportunity to apply. And this evening I'll put the link in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Latifa. Eleanor? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't see the hand thing down there to punch on. But I just want to continue to remind everyone about the Resource Center for the youth and for the museum that I would like to, just follow up to continue to say that we want, or I want that to happen. And I saw an email, Rico, I can't pronounce his first name. And I saw the email about he was here and he wanted to start doing stuff in the community. And I sent one back. I would like for him to join us and push in a resource center for the youth, a one-stop, which should not just be a normal resource center, but it should be something for the youth and the young people where they can come and if, in the morning, if they need breakfast, if they need somewhere to stay overnight, if they're homeless, they're in college, they're in high school, we want to be able to have them in North Richmond and anywhere else in Richmond. And the museum is something Dr. Clark wanted, and I just want to follow up and hope that that can come in, that we can do that also. And Rico, and I see him on there, we really need a young man like yourself. Because we're going to need someone to oversee that resource center. So I'm looking for young people, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eleanor. Jorge.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to take the time to introduce myself. I'm the new member of the North Richmond MAC. And so I look forward to working with you all and seeing some positive changes in our community happen. And I just wanted to take this time again in space to just introduce myself to you all. And thank you again for the opportunity and allowing me to be part of the MAC. I appreciate that.
Welcome. We're grateful to have you with us. Okay, there is Cynthia.
When you said approval of agenda and minutes, so we can't approve the minutes because it wasn't a quorum, but Beverly approved it, but I didn't get any seconds or anything like that.
No, we didn't have to approve the minutes, but the agenda. Yeah, that is true. Good point of order. Okay. So Beverly, did you make the motion for approval?
Yes, I move to approve that we accept the agenda for tonight's meeting as submitted.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor, I know you by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstentions? It carries. We will continue. Thank you, Cynthia. Annie, did you have anything? I saw your hand at one point. No? Okay. So we're going to move now to the presentations from the Sheriff Department. Someone from the Sheriff Department here? Yes, Mark, there you go.
Hi, how you guys doing tonight? I'll start off with the reports for the month of October. For select crime trends, in the month of August, we had 8 reports. In the month of September, we had 11, and in October, 12. Looks primarily like the increase there was in the recovery of stolen vehicles. In the month of September, we only had 3 recovered stolen vehicles, and for the month of October, we had 4. So that was one of the more significant changes. We still continue to see a lot of abandoned vehicles, and we're recovering a lot of stolen vehicles along the tracks. And more recently, we're finding that they're being burned out. We suspect this is an attempt to try and cover up some of the evidence or any potential evidence that we may be able to recover. But that still continues to be a problem, as do catalytic converter thefts. Some of the efforts that are being taken by individuals as far as protecting their property is actually assisting in retaining the catalytic converter. Just read a report this morning of one in which someone had a bar installed across the catalytic converter to prevent the thieves from being able to get it. However, it didn't stop it from being damaged. So they still cut the catalytic converter. They just weren't able to make away with it. So still a problem. Please report any suspicious activity as it relates to the vehicles at the time that you guys are seeing it. Other significant events that we have is we're looking at conducting a tow-a-thon right now in North Richmond, and essentially just to address some of the parking issues that we've been having, as well as some of the concerns that have been brought to light recently. Tentative dates for that are November 11th and November 18th. It'll probably be between the hours of 0800 and noon on each day. So you'll probably see tow trucks and deputies down there doing parking enforcement, removing vehicles that can be towed from the roadway. Other things of note, on the 25th, I met with the PTA at Verde Elementary to address some of the concerns that they have with some of the suspicious activity within the neighborhood, and also just concerns of general safety that they have as the kids make their way to after school programs and go to and from school. So we're identifying some plans to put in place to kind of mitigate some of those concerns. Obviously the more immediate is just increasing our patrols during the times of drop-offs and pickups, but then also working with code enforcement to address any other issues along the safe passage route. So those are things that you'll see in place. And then also just continuing to work with the PTA as well as the school and address concerns and try and head anything off from becoming a bigger issue. That's all I have for this month. If anybody has any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
I saw Bertha's hand first.
Hi, yes, my name is Berta and I am North Richmond resident. My question is, you mentioned that you are collecting the abandoned cars, and I have seen 2 crash cars between Ramrail by next to the Ennis garden or whatever it calls. Those cars are been there for months now, close to the railroads. Why is that nobody take care of it?
Well, not knowing the specific vehicles you're talking about, I don't have an immediate answer for you. I will look into that, and I will touch base with our resident deputies and find out if they're aware. I know I received a photo of one yesterday from one of our resident deputies that the vehicles you're talking about, one of them wouldn't happen to be a white sedan, would it, with a significant damage to it?
Yeah, they are on Market Street, close to the railroads. One is kind of pinkish, but that one has been there for many months. And the other one, I forgot the color, but all are crashed without wheels, all smashed down. But they're been for long time already.
Yeah, if that's the case, I'll work with the resident deputies. I'll actually pass that on to them today and ask them to go out and take a look at it. But yeah, if they're stripped, wrecked, or burned, they shouldn't be on the roadway. It poses a public safety hazard. And I'll ask the deputies to take a look at it for you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Cynthia, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say about the catalytic converters. I'll be watching the news, and what I've come to realize that people that go outside and catch people trying to steal their catalytic converter off their car are getting shot. Those people are carrying guns that go out to steal things, and quite a few other incidents where people come out their house trying to protect their property and they're getting shot at and getting wounded. So I just want to say, if you catch somebody trying to steal your catalytic converter, don't go out and try and defend for yourself, because it's very dangerous nowadays. And the second one is, I heard on the news that there was a shooting at the Castro encampment. You hear anything about that?
I'm not aware of that one.
That'd be Richmond.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
Richmond, but yeah, as far as the shootings go, in response to the catalytic converter thefts, we in the unincorporated county areas, not recent, but over the summer, we had 3 shootings related to that, and they were all interrupted catalytic converter thefts to where the homeowner or the vehicle owner confronted the suspect. So in those cases, my recommendation is be a good witness, try and get as much identifying information as you can, whether it's license plates, suspect descriptions, direction of travel, things of that nature. That helps us out rather than placing yourself at risk. Thankfully, in 2 of the shootings, nobody was struck, and one of them, it wasn't life threatening, but nonetheless, it was serious enough that they got injured. So we were able to make an arrest in that case, but not worth it when you consider what you're challenging them over. Thank you.
Jorge, go ahead.
Hi, Sheriff Rodriguez. In regards to the catalytic converters, I just want to know more of the statistics. How much are you seeing that happening here in North Richmond? Is it like once a month, or is there a specific number that you're seeing every month that you can provide us, just so we can have an idea?
Yeah, looking at the select crime trends from North Richmond, it looks to be somewhat not as frequent there, but we are seeing that still the petty theft and the numbers there, at least that I have here on these reports for the select crime trends, it's showing once a month over the last 3 months that I showed as it relates to the thefts from the vehicle. But some of them also, depending on the value of it, may be classified differently. So we are seeing some of those also with the grand thefts from vehicles. But just countywide, it continues to be a significant thing for us. But yeah, looking at these, and some of them are classified as vandalisms, the ones that aren't actually stolen, and that the catalytic converter is actually left in place. We've got 2 of those for the month of October. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, no worries.
Okay, let's see. All right, well, there's no more hands up. Oh, Tanya, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share 2, one meeting and one event. I put the meeting in the chat. So the next Castro stakeholder meeting is November 10th at 5:30 p.m. And I shared the Zoom in the chat. So for people who are interested to learn about what's happening at Castro, they have made some improvements. They had a big cleanup not too long ago that went really well. They were able to get a lot of trash from there. And so this will be a great meeting to attend if you want to learn more about what's happening November 10th at 5:30 p.m. And then also Verde Elementary School is having a celebration of learning. And that one is November 16 from 3 to 6 p.m. And that's going to be happening at Verde Elementary School. For people who are interested, you can also contact me or Marta. There's going to be like tabling, and there's a lot of really great resources that are going to be handed out. So, and just I guess a shout out to Lieutenant Rodriguez for going to the PTA meeting. It was like a really great meeting with the parents, and there's a lot of really great action steps happening. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, we're going to move. Is there anyone from Richmond Police Department present tonight?
Chair Gilmore, Latifa had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Latifah, go ahead.
Apologies. I'm not sure where to ask the question, but maybe it could be answered during the meeting. Berta had mentioned the cars over there, and I was in that same vicinity. There is a place where there's like lots of vending machines and trash bags. That's like a real eyesore. So if somebody, I'm not sure who's responsible for that, but maybe before the night ends, somebody can respond. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, I can respond really quickly. Yeah, so that is, I know Market has been not looking the best, when I drive through it. So that is our priority street for our next task force walk, to walk Market. So in that one, code enforcement joins us during those walks along with the sheriff and other agencies. So I believe our walks are every second week of the month. So we'll be getting to market in November.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, any more questions for Officer Rodriguez?
I have something to share. My name is Leticia Chavez, and now that
Well-
Latifa and I'm sorry, and Berta
Well,
said
let
about,
me, before you, are you asking about something to the sheriff or are you
Sheriff to
sharing?
the sheriff, yeah, we get
well,
behind.
it
No,
can
I'm
be
just-
about this. It can be about that, but that it's about what their enforcement is. In what Tanya said, there is one side of what is a ramp rail in between the train tracks that it looks like a lot of RVs, and there is a lot of trash in there. That if somebody who takes care of that, or if that they're gonna go and look at it, it's by between the train tracks, and it's like it looks like a property, but that is like there is like some RVs and a lot of trash that it looks like a hazard to the environment, you know, environmental hazard or health hazard for people walking. So I don't know if somebody
Yeah, I think that's
enforce
what
anything.
Tanya was referring to
Mhm.
when she made her
Okay.
statement. Yeah,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Okay, anyone from Richmond PD here? Thank you, Officer Rodriguez.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone from there. How about from Highway Patrol? I don't see anyone either from there. So that concludes this portion. And so now we're going to move for no action items, but the item 6 is a general plan presentation. And we will have 2 minutes for folks to speak in with questions and things, but it depends on, you know, how much time we have left. We won't cut you off, yeah, but we want everybody that wants to have a statement be able to make it, or comment or questions. And then, so right now, Tanya, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes. So I will turn it to Will Nelson, who's in the meeting. I know Supervisor Joya will also be joining us shortly, and he will also have a couple of make a statement as well. But I'll pass it to Will. Thank you, Will.
Thanks, Tanya, and thank you, everyone. Good to see you again. I think this is the third time I'm coming to visit with you to talk about the general plan update. The last time was back in June. So I was going to do the presentation again that we normally do. I've added a couple North Richmond specific slides to it this time. And then as the chair mentioned, then I'd be happy to take any questions following that. So if that sounds good, I will start the PowerPoint. Let me just fire it up here. Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay. Does everyone see the PowerPoint? Looking for a head nod. Okay, I see a thumbs up from Tanya. All right. Well then, okay, great. Thanks. Again, my name is Will Nelson. I'm a principal planner with Contra Costa County's Department of Conservation and Development, and I'm the project manager for Envision Contra Costa 2040. So we have been working on this since, well, the Board of Supervisors instructed us or directed us to undertake this project back in December of 2017. It's been, excuse me, it's been quite a while now. And we really started working on it in earnest in September of 2018. So, whoops, did not advance. Let me see. Okay, there we go. So Envision 2040 is an update to 3 county planning documents: the general plan, the zoning code, and the climate action plan. Each of these will be covered by an environmental impact report that looks at the impacts of the policy changes and regulatory changes contained in those updates. So For those who are unfamiliar with what a general plan is, it is a jurisdiction's highest land use planning document. All of our decisions on land use have to be consistent with the general plan. So it is a visioning document as well. It's going to go out to 2040. So it'll have pragmatic aspects and also aspirational aspects. And one of the big things that a general plan does is it balances our conservation goals with growth, while also trying to maintain the quality of life that we're used to or improve it. It's important because many aspects of our lives are affected by the general plan. And here's a list of several things that it touches on: housing and job opportunities, community character and design, public facilities, the roadway design, resource conservation, hazards. All these things are addressed in the various chapters of the general plan. We're updating it now because the existing general plan was adopted. It's almost 32. It'll be 32 in January. And so quite a lot has changed since then, in the planning world, just in society. But there have been a lot of new laws that have been passed since then. Just a couple of them are listed here. SB 375, having to do with sustainable communities, is really about greenhouse gas reductions. If you've heard of Plan Bay Area, it's an outgrowth of that legislation. AB 379 requires us to address climate change and resilience. And perhaps the most important one is SB 1000, which requires every city and county to address environmental justice. We're required to identify what are called, quote, disadvantaged communities in our jurisdiction, though in our general plan, we're going to call them impacted communities, and really start righting a lot of the wrongs that have happened over the past several decades, a lot of which have been related to planning, redlining, underinvestment in communities, things like that. So SB 1000 gets at that. There have been numerous laws passed related to housing. Seems like every time you turn on the news or look in the paper, there's some new law that's been enacted to tackle the housing crisis. Wildfire and public safety, these have really risen to the top also, of course, in recent years. So many fires, so many destructive fires throughout the state. And then there are a lot of plans that didn't exist 32 years ago, or they themselves were much different then, or have changed in the intervening decades. And so we have to be consistent with those, like Plan Bay Area. The state has a plan for the Delta, all sorts of things that we want to be consistent with. So a lot of reasons to update the general plan. So the components of the plan, it's broken into chapters called elements. So in the left-hand column are the existing general plan elements, and the new general plan elements are in the right-hand column. So you'll see a lot of them are the same. We have combined some, and there's also a new one, stronger communities, which is important. I'm going to go on to the next slide. These 4 themes here: economic development, environmental justice, sustainability, and community health, were when the board directed us to update the general plan, they directed our department to weave these 4 themes throughout the document. And they do touch on many of those different topics that are back in this list. But as we got into it, we originally weren't going to have a new element. But as we got into it, we realized that those 4 themes still kind of need a home, where all the background information is, and where the policies and actions are going to go that don't cleanly fit into any of the other elements. So they're going to be in that stronger communities element, which is the first element in the new general plan. So if anyone, people who have dealt with the general plan often have seen the land use map. It's often the only thing that people really interact with. And so while there's a lot more to the general plan, the land use map is one of the most important parts, if not the most important part. This is the existing land use map for unincorporated Contra Costa County. And so all the different colors mean something different. All the grayed out sections are the incorporated cities. They each have their own general plan, and they make their own planning decisions. But all the parts that are in color are under the county's jurisdiction. And as you can see, most of this are these blues and greens and kind of olive colors. Those are rural, kind of non-urban general plan designations. So things like watersheds, and parks, and agricultural land. And you see that actually most of the jurisdiction of the county is that it's mostly rural. When you in the key at the bottom left, you do see the yellows and browns, some reds, purple, lavender. Those are the various residential designations, the various commercial and industrial designations. And so, of course, you start looking closer and you start seeing those. Some that do pop out are the purples, that are their heavy industry. So the refineries pop out, big industry, industrial areas pop out. And of course, the northern half of North Richmond, which is currently designated heavy industry, kind of pops out. So these different colors tell you, how many housing units you can have per acre, or how many square feet you can have of commercial or industrial building, and so this is really it helps to visualize how land is used throughout the county. So here's the existing land use map for North Richmond. And as you can see, most of it in the northern portion of the community is heavy industry. You got some light industry there, that kind of lavender color. And then in the lower, the bottom half of the community is where you've got your residences. So this is the existing land use map. And you'll see that the next map is simplified, changing all of the heavy industry to light industry, and then cleaning up the residential land use designations, making them more, making them consistent with what is actually on the ground. In this previous map, you'll see this area says SH, that single family high density, the land use designation. It actually, the density in North Richmond is actually greater than what that designation allows. And so what we did was we went in, we looked at, okay, how many parcels are there? What's the actual density? And so we have a new designation for much of it, RMH, residential medium high, that's 17 to 30 units per net acre. And that's more accurate. Also, you see there these gray strips along some of the major streets with the MU designation, that's mixed use. So that would allow for residential or commercial development on those streets. And then, the Las Deltas is actually, it is not, it says to be determined there. It actually isn't. We have a, it is designated for residential development, but we just haven't updated the map yet with the appropriate color, the appropriate designation. And then of course you see the public and semi-public things like Verde and the recycling facility, public uses over on the west side of the parkway, like the sewer treatment plant, those sorts of things. RC, resource conservation, you see that on the parks, or I'm sorry, the creeks and such. And so a new part of the general plan is called the community profiles. So the existing general plan has a section called policies for specific geographic areas. And it's just a list of policies for various communities. What we're doing in the new general plan is having these little sort of mini plans for the various communities. And these are a couple pages from the North Richmond profile. So you can see, I know hard to read here, but on the left-hand side, you've got a column that has context, it has some demographic information. It goes on to have several maps. I think this one's about 8 or 9 pages long in total. Yeah, there's a lot of mapping. Then it has guiding principles. And these are sort of the things as the county is just making decisions in North Richmond. These are the ideas that would guide that, along with the policies and actions. And policies are really the rules, and then actions are the to-do list. So for the county as a whole, and then for each community, there's this list of actions that things the county wants to accomplish and that the community wants to accomplish over the life of the general plan, again, going out to 2040. And all the way back in 2019, we had several community meetings in North Richmond and got a lot of great feedback from residents. And that much of that is what went into formulating these principles, policies, and actions. Also, you may be able to see that after some of those some of these, it says QOL. And that is referencing the quality of life plan that was prepared as well. So we also took a lot of borrowed a lot from that to incorporate into the general plan. And so jumping onto the zoning code, the zoning is the second layer of land use regulation. It's got a map that's similar to the general plan land use map, and there are zoning districts. And so there'll be things like single family residential, multifamily residential, different densities, neighborhood business, retail business, general commercial, things like that. Those are some of the zone names. They tell you what uses are allowed in each zone, what the permitting requirements are. And they include site development standards. So, your height limits, your setbacks, parking requirements, signage, fences, trash enclosures, all these things that shape the physical environment are really in the zoning code. And so it's a finer level of detail than the general plans you see at the bottom, where the general plan might just have a color that says, residential of such and such density. The zoning will get more precise. It'll say single family and say maybe, with these lot sizes, or multifamily with these lot sizes, that sort of thing. And the zoning was adopted all the way back in the 40s, and it's never had a comprehensive overhaul. So it's long overdue, even more than the general plan. And because state law requires the two to be consistent, we necessarily have to update the zoning with the general plan update. And then there's the climate action plan. So that's the county strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's actually a fairly new document. It was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in 2015, but even in just that handful of years, it was December 2015, so it's almost 7 years old. There's been, again, a lot of new legislation, new greenhouse gas reduction targets enacted by the state, and an evolving understanding of the issue of climate change, resilient strategies, new technologies. So while it's not an old document per se, we felt that it would be wise to update it as well to go along with the other two updated documents. And so all these are going to be covered by an environmental impact report. The project is a quote project per state law. So the EIR has to disclose the physical effects, or the effects of the project on the physical environment, identify measures to mitigate impacts, and describe alternatives. And so there will be a draft. First, there'll be a 30-day period where the county will accept comments on what residents feel should be in the EIR. And then once we write the draft, there will be at least a 45-day review period. We take the comments that we receive during that time. We make changes if warranted, and respond to those comments. And then we prepare a final EIR, and that gets adopted with the general plan, zoning code, and climate action plan at the end. Opportunities for public involvement. So the best is the website, envisioncontracosta2040.org. A lot of great resources on there. It has all the documents we publish. It has a calendar of upcoming meetings. It has tools. You can go in and upload pictures. You can actually submit pictures to be included in these new documents. You can, write to us. You can sign up for the mailing list. I'll show you that in a second. But we have our community meetings, our MAC meetings, various county commissions such as HAZMAT, sustainability, and planning, the sustainability committee. We also have been to the library committee, or commission rather, the Arts and Culture Commission back when it existed. So we've been having meetings of all sorts of of bodies, county entities, and of course the Board of Supervisors. And we've also met with numerous community groups from the Crockett Lions Club all the way up to the Western States Petroleum Association. So no one is too big or too small to meet with us to talk about Envision 2040. Here's again that public participation here at envisioncontracasa2040.org/online engagement. This is where you can sign up for the mailing list to receive those updates when we release documents, when there are major meetings. You can also tailor it to be specific to your community. So if you wanted to only receive updates about North Richmond, you could select that. And then finally, just this is the documents page I talked about. So couple things to note here: the draft community profiles, that entire North Richmond profile is available here for review along with all the other community profiles. And then those current and draft land use maps, also the draft goals, policies, and actions for the whole county. So, there are rules that we set for the entire county that apply to all the communities. And then in those community profiles, we have community specific sets of rules that are that supplement those countywide policies. One thing I should have mentioned when I was talking about the profile, though, is that those were the very first work product following the public meetings, and they are outdated. And so we're in the process right now of updating them. We always knew that once we wrote the policies for the rest of the county, for the entire county, that we'd go back and start, looking at the profiles again, saying, okay, well now, this item is covered in a countywide policy, so we're going to take it out. Or just the way that we phrase things has changed, it's improved, and new issues have come up over the time. So the community profiles are being updated as we speak. So this is a very good time to meet with you to talk about the North Richmond profile. And then happy to answer any questions. I'll put my contact information up for a moment here so people can jot it down. And also I'll make this available to Tanya to send out to everyone, this PowerPoint.
I see a hand from Tony, unless John wants to say something before we start the questioning and answers period.
No, I just actually wanted to be here. I was at another meeting, but wanted to be here to listen to the community input and, maybe offer some comments later, but mostly to listen. And I've seen Will's presentation. So I know we've wanted to get, this is a good opportunity to get input from the community. And as Will said, it's still a work in progress.
I think Supervisor Joya has it memorized by now.
Okay, Tony, go ahead.
That's right. Yes. Oh, and we want to welcome the newest MAC meeting, Jorge.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, once again.
Okay, Tony, go ahead.
This is Tony Sperry with the Housing Authority. You mentioned that the zoning for Los Deltas is changing or hasn't changed yet. Can you elaborate a little more on that? I know it was zoned R30. Is that changing, or do we need to kind of get new information from you guys on that for our RFQ we're issuing?
So and I know that we had been in touch with the Housing Authority about this. Now, I'm not the housing element lead, so back to that list of elements of the general plan, there's one housing element that the state requires to be updated every 8 years. And it just happens to be that this time around, it's happening concurrently with our general plan update, which actually makes it a little difficult, more difficult than usual. But we had, I know that when we had spoken with you, Tony, and I'm sorry, I forget the other gentleman's name there.
Joseph?
Yeah. Yes, Joseph. Joseph, a while back about the housing element, we pretty much were, I think we're saying whatever density the Housing Authority wants is what we would put in there. But the county does have a large regional, they call it the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, the RHNA, It's the number of units we have to plan for over the next 8 years, and this time it's 7,610 units. Last time it was 1,367. This time it's 7,610. So we are always looking for sites and are friends of density. So I don't have the number at my fingertips for what Los Deltas is tagged as right now. But if you have if there's something that you would like to tell us, like this is the number, then that's what we can accommodate that.
Well, I don't know if you recall, but we're not developing it. We're going to put that 12 acres out for development at some point down the road. But I want to just kind of make sure that we have the right language in the housing element in the general plan to talk about what the zoning is going to be like out there. And then, we're getting ready to release an RFQ on the sale of the scattered sites where people will want to know what the zoning is for the scattered sites in those neighborhoods surrounding Los Deltas. So maybe I can just reach out to you offline and, we can figure that out.
Sure.
But Tony, I do think it's a good public issue to talk about, and Will, you may want to summarize, because there's been a lot of community interest about what the zoning will be for the scattered sites and for Los Deltas. And so can you summarize again what the zoning is for the scattered sites? Because I know even with one of the potential developers, they talked about, small lots and density. So can you talk about that density on both the scattered site and Los Deltas? I think that's really important to align all of this.
Yeah, sure. So the scattered sites fall into that residential medium high general plan designation of 17 to 30 units per acre. And that's based on largely on what already exists. This is similar, Supervisor, to the Kensington issue, where the development pattern, what's on the ground already, exceeds what the general plan shows. So in this case, it's a much more dense. It's a much higher density. Is what I'm trying to say. It is. So it falls in that 17 to 30. So the scattered sites, they're generally already existing. I mean, well, they are existing lots, right? So they would just be developed, per the zoning, which is planned unit district, which allows single family. It also allows flexibility. I mean, to consolidate sites, do something more. There's a site, in fact, this is not a scattered site, but it's at the corner of Grove. It's a 0.4 acre site, Grove, and I forget the cross street, where someone, in fact, I was just emailing them today, telling them that their proposal isn't dense enough because they only want to put 4 units there, and they need to go higher.
Yeah.
And so the scatter sites will match. They'll just match what.
Well, I want to make sure that if someone from Richmond Land is on, you want to ask this question, because they've been having direct conversations with the Housing Authority about something that's different what the general plan currently allows, which is development on smaller lots. I don't know, is someone from Richmond Land here? Hopefully, because I want to make sure, Will, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, because there's an RFQ process going out shortly, and I know Tony knows this. And Tony, I don't know how many units per acre and the lot sizes on that, but we did say we wanted to make sure the general plan allowed a lot of flexibility on what these below market rate units could allow by nonprofit housing.
Well, those are legal lots. They could just be built on. There's going to be no interference.
But Tony can address this, and so can Richmond Land.
Yeah. So one of the things that
they were smaller lots.
Right. The lots, I believe, are almost a little under 4,000 square feet each. So the duplexes are in about 7,900 square foot lot. And there's some thought to taking 2 lots side by side and putting like an 8-plex on there or something like that, where you're definitely increasing the density. You're definitely possibly exceeding the height restriction. So they kind of want to ensure that the language is there, or is the language is, kind of fungible to a point where we can, massage it to qualify a project that wants to do something like that. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do, some of the things that they want to do on some of these lots. And even that includes the contiguous site, because there's going to be some, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some interest in putting a 4 or 5 story, apartment complex on part of that. And, if that's the case, then clearly we got to get it rezoned for that. And, how easy or how complicated will that be down the road?
So the existing general plan designation for most of the residential portion of North Richmond allows up to 7.2 units per acre. We're scrapping that and replacing it with 17 to 30. So, I mean, it's a huge increase from the existing. So it would be shocking to me if those did not fit within that kind of generous density range. Richmond Land's Eco Village, for example, is doesn't fit right now, but would under the new
Okay.
general plan. So the zoning
I
isn't
think
going
that's
to.
the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the zoning isn't going to change because it's going to be planned unit district. And the way that the planned unit district is written in North Richmond is that you just look at the general plan designation and it tells you what you can do. We are going to have to update that because it refers to the existing general plan designations. But, the intention is to allow more housing. That's one thing that we definitely heard in the community meetings was we need more development here. We need enough people. We want to see the vacant lots gone. We want to see, life and community and enough people to also sustain businesses in our community. So, the next jump up would be 30 to 60 units per acre. And that seems a little extreme for that community. Yeah. So I think we have it right with the 17 to 30. I actually am having one of my colleagues right now try and look up the unit count on Los Deltas for the housing element, just so you know that we're going to be revising it. So, we'll definitely get it right. If you have an actual unit count, a number that you envision though for that site, the whole of the site that you'd want to pass on to us.
We didn't specifically come up with one, mainly because we're not developing it, but I think there's going to be some interest, on behalf of the developers who bid to develop that land to have an increase in density. But I think, 17 units per acre is going to definitely meet that criteria regardless. So
okay.
I think we'll be all right. I mean, at 17 units per acre, even if I only estimate at 11 acres, we're talking about 330 units there. And, that's a lot of units to put on that piece of land as it is. So, yeah.
So would you want us to make sure it's that one and not a lower designation?
I think 17 per acre is fine. They can build less, but, I think fundamentally,
no, they can't.
They have to do at least.
Could be a problem. If you
So,
can build,
yeah, that could be a problem. Yeah.
So we can do 7 to 17 or 17 to 30.
Well, the
Might be 7
problem,
to 17.
the
Probably
problem,
more realistic.
the problem is if somebody wanted to carry on what's right behind it, they couldn't do it if you couldn't get that. I don't know what that is per acre at Bella Flores, but you would be stopping that from being an option.
Well, no, and we can look at it as the whole of the site, right? So you could have, if we look at it as an average, you could have a different unit type in one part of the site that's a little lower density to match better with what's adjacent, and then it could increase in density. And these numbers nowadays, we're seeing projects where people are getting fairly high densities in relatively modest buildings. Like, there's a project in Martinez where they have 35 units per acre in a 2-story building. There's one, I haven't seen it, but I was told about it in Danville where it's 60 units per acre in a 3-story building with underground parking. So, you know, these numbers that often in the past, and I think part of that is because people are, we're seeing a trend where they're weighted very much toward studios and 1-bedrooms. And so, you know, in the past, you might be looking at 4 or 5-story buildings to get that kind of density. And now people are doing it in shorter buildings.
I guess my
So
issue
if
is
I'm
that
here,
the market, I mean, is the market and desirability based on the isolation that is existing now. And if you're going in for market rate housing is one thing, and the other thing is affordable housing. Affordable housing has all kind of contingencies on it based on the availability of amenities that are close by to it that can count. And the other special funds that you get along with it are those that are, you know, the higher points are connected directly to BART or something that's going there. So it has to do that. You have to think of the market. So if you had a continuum that if there was a right project that would fit based on marketability and it's not as dense as you want, then we wouldn't want that not to be considered because of the issue of being able to have resources to develop. And most of the studies showed, you know, the marketability of those to be as dense as you're talking about. Right now, at least, doesn't seem to be the case. So those are something, the flexibility gives them a wider range for someone's RFP and to be able to you know, get a developer to be able to do that.
So,
well, if I hear you correctly, you're saying that you know, even though it's 17 acres or 17 units per acre, you could have that stack where there might be 80 on one parcel, you know, 4 or 5-story building there that kind of averages out over the other parcels to get to the point where on average, it turns out to be 17 units or a minimum of 17 units per acre. Is that right?
yeah, if it's developed as one project.
Right.
And
so one of the things we probably need to have a discussion with some other folks is going to be whether we want to go 7 to 17 or 17 to 30. I think that would have an impact, you know, on
so
what happens then.
So I just got a text from my colleague. I think he's saying that around 230 is what we were looking at in the housing element. And that was at the 17 to 30, 11 and a half acres, 17 to 30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. That's 195 is 17
Right.
times 11.5. So they factored up somehow. Now the thing is this, this is where if we put this in the housing element, the number has to be hit. So normally when we are doing this, we'll sometimes overshoot and then do the EIR on the higher number, and then we can walk it back because we've evaluated a more impactful proposal, like general plan designation. With the housing element, you have to hit at least the number. So you can't overshoot. You have to, if anything, undershoot. This is why when I mentioned it gets kind of difficult doing these two things at the same time, because you can do it one way with one part of it, but when another, you have to do it a different methodology with another. So we actually, in this case, we have to make sure that the low number is what's attained.
Okay.
Well, I mean, for marketability and for the area, I don't mind it being as high as you want, but we don't want the site to sit there, and we don't want, I mean, hopefully all the burden of meeting your requirement of housing is not placed only in, you know, dependent more on this area that has a lot of affordable housing in it already. the opportunity to become homeowners in the area is really not present except for the scattered sites. The newer developments that we have been, marketed and are there presently. And if the community desired to continue to have that type of ownership in the area, I don't see why we would take that option away.
Well, so the county does not regulate whether we don't get into ownership versus rental. And so we only look at the unit count. So if a developer comes in and wants to make it for sale and wants to file a subdivision, that's their right, but we don't dictate that. So I don't, if it's important to have it have there be home ownership opportunities there, a certain percentage of them. And this is something where, I think I guess it'll put you on the spot here, Tony, is that with the RFP, that would be the place to do something like that because the county isn't going to regulate ownership.
Well, the question is,
Yeah, no,
one more thing, Tony, for you. The question is what the community wants in the community and what it allows. And the range, what I'm saying is that there's two aspects going here. One is to be marketable in the area. It's almost, we can't do condos and basically think we're going to have a market for that in North Richmond, because they can basically for that price go somewhere else. We want to be able to have folks have maybe first time home buyer things that they see a house that they would get somewhere in, I don't know, where they have to go out to get it. They can get it right in their own backyard. But if we put those bridges on there where, you got to get so many units in that area, then that opportunity goes away. So I'm saying, why don't we keep that designation that you have for the higher density that you did from Parkway than you did Bella Flores. Let that Bella Flores designation be the bottom, but go up to your amount that you're the 17 to 30 units. So that gives a greater range of flexibility and it allows the community to basically make that choice when they get ready to go, find, a suitable project or suitable developer.
The reason is we are, we only have so many options with these land use designations. We have 7. And so they have these established density ranges. So we couldn't have one, for example, now that goes like 17 to 30 to allow ultimate flexibility. For example, we're in a position where we have to choose one.
Well, I'm just saying you could choose a bottom one, you can get more. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We could go low. We also want to facilitate housing construction. And so the thing is, if we go too low, then someone could be burdened with having to do a general plan amendment later on. And we were hoping to avoid that as well. So, the general plan can be amended. None of this is written, etched in stone, but we would like to make it as smooth a process for people moving forward as we can.
Well, if somebody wanted to do what was going on in Bella Flores, they would have to go get a general plan amendment as well, right? If you had a higher density.
I mean, to reduce the density?
Yeah, because you're saying there's a
too high,
floor where there's a floor that we got to hit, right? And so if you don't have the bottom on that, and it's in there at a higher density than what, say, Bella Flores is, we would have to go back in and get a general plan amendment to do that, right?
to go down.
To go down.
Yes. If we go, too high, then, and someone wanted to develop lower, yes, they'd have to go.
That's why I'm asking that the floor at least be on the Bella Flores per acre amount. I don't know exactly what that was. I know it's higher density.
You know what that was, Don? I was going to ask. Yeah.
I know it's higher than Parkway Estates, but I just don't know what that
I feel like if we do like a 7 to 17, that kind of checks the boxes for everybody. Where you can get up to 195 and 196 units on those 11.5 acres, but you can also do something that's denser, where you have a higher rise kind of complex, and averaging that out across the 11.5 acres. You can do the single family, you can do the multifamily, and it all kind of blends in, in a somewhat reasonably, attractive way, rather than, you just have, these, 4 or 5 story buildings all over the place. So, I mean, that's my thought on that.
Sounds like we're gonna talk some more about this one.
Yeah, I think we should.
So just just so you know, we are wrapping up the housing element. We published the list of sites, and now we're refining it. And I have to see what precisely we have in there for the unit count, but there really is not that much more time. It is, we're going to republish the list soon and start our EIR work. We're actually doing 2 EIRs, one on the housing element alone and one on the rest of the general plan. So,
well, if you can adjust the Los Deltas site to be at the lowest, what Bella Flores per acre is, up to your highest, what Tony would, I think that's what, was that 17?
Yeah. Yeah, 7 of 17 is one of those options rather than 1730, so that you're not in a situation where you have to have a minimum of 17 units per acre on average, where, I would say that 11.5 acres is more suited to about 196, 197 units than it is to 330 units, where you get, seriously overcrowded on that. So that's just what I was thinking.
So the Parkway Estates is in the 7 to 17, just for visualization at the low end, right? And those are
okay,
more
okay,
more dense.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's good. I'm sorry now.
17.
So let me get some more folks in here. It's just we've been going back and forth, and I don't want to. I know what time is moving on. I saw Annie, and then I saw Adele, and then I saw Letitia. So go ahead, Annie.
Thank you, Chairman Gilmore, and also Will and Supervisor Joya. My thing was part of what Don has brought up as far as the Bella Flores and the Parkway Estates. One of the things when we did, when I was actually active back in 2017 and 16, when we was looking at the plan, and one of the things that a lot of the community was speaking about the space as far as having a home, a single home built, a family home built that has space, looking at a backyard. What happened to that? Is that still in the plan? I know as I read it, it wasn't really lined out exactly what type of housing was going to be there. But one of the things that people did want was a yard, a backyard. Now, I don't know how much space is going to be allocated for that, but to look at a single house, family dwelling to represent and to look like the Bella Flores and to look like the Parkway Estates. Now that's in the campus that I'm speaking of, the campus of the old Los Deltas grounds. The other thing is looking at, I don't know how much that Tony has looked at for the scatter sites and what the scatter sites will be holding. But of course, one of the things we don't want them to be bid upon and not build upon, and whatever type is going to be on those partials. So those are just my comments. Don had really discussed a lot of what I wanted to actually bring forth in this plan, and to make sure that it's somewhere in this plan that it is not just to not to have a space, environmental space for livable space for families. So I just want to bring that out.
Thanks, Annie. Adele?
Thank you. I actually have three things I wanted to say. One is just a follow up on this discussion about the housing. And I am not a North Richmond resident, but I'm involved with the Urban Health Project. And so I have this interest in North Richmond. And I just wanted to throw out for people's consideration that, you know, on the numbers, on the density numbers, I liked what I heard Tony and Chair Gilmore say that, you know, I think it's good to retain some flexibility so that there are options for ownership, home ownership. And one of my questions was, I know that the county's RENA numbers, it's a county-wide number, and I'm wondering whether the number that you're looking to come from North Richmond, whether that's really equitable compared to other areas of the county. In other words, like if, you know, Central County and East County, are they going to provide their fair share? Because it shouldn't be that North Richmond becomes a land of apartment buildings because that's where, you know, the county's looking to get those numbers from. So I just wanted to throw that out that, you know, it should be equitable. And then my other points were on the land use map. I noticed that on your proposed land use map, the Urban Tilth Farm property and the property next to it is still shown as public / semi-public. And I know that we had a discussion back in June about that. And I thought we had concluded that light industrial was more appropriate because of the planned unit overlay, which allows more things in if that is an industrial designation. So I'm just wondering why that is still shown as public / semi-public.
Because we just haven't updated the map yet.
Oh, okay. All right. So all our discussion at the end of June is still valid.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then my last thing was talking again about housing. Currently, I know that the planned unit overlay does not allow housing on a property designated heavy industrial. Is that also true for light industrial?
Yeah, I'd have to look. I mean, the light industrial land use designation doesn't allow housing. Well, this is one of getting into the weeds a little bit, highlights one of the problems we have. The light industrial zoning, now it's not in light industrial zoning here, but the light industrial zone, which supposedly matches the light industrial general plan designation, says that you can have housing with a use permit. But the designation in the general plan doesn't mention it at all.
Okay.
And so, you know, this confuses people a lot of times because they'll say, well, the zoning allows this, but the general plan says that, and the general plan is always controlling. So the general plan doesn't allow housing now. We don't intend for it to allow housing going forward.
So then that raises a question for me, which is, would it be prudent to have the possibility of housing on some of these parcels that are shown as light industrial, or at least have that option? And I know you were talking about changing the plan, working on modifications to the planned unit overlay. You know, would that be the place for that to be, or is that something that should be addressed in the general plan?
I don't think that the county intends to do that, because when you look at North Richmond and the mix of uses that are in the industrial part of it, both, you know, existing, proposed, under construction, approved, you know, mixing housing in with those, I'm not sure is the best idea. I mean, there's truck traffic, there's these soils, we might need remediation from the uses that have been there before. There seems to be a clean break at the creek of where your housing is in the community and where the job generating uses are in the community. And I don't know, mixing them. I'm not sure what the benefit would be mixing them north of the creek.
Yeah,
It seems like a lot of conflict could be generated in doing so.
And again, it's just a question for me. I'm not a North Richmond resident, so I mean, it's really the people who live in North Richmond who should be, commenting on that. But that's it. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Letitia.
Hi, and thanks for giving the chance to talk. And thanks, Adele, you brought a really good point that it was my first question that I was going to make about equity. And I wanted to ask if, the same amount of houses expected to be developed or in here, the North Richmond, it's about the same as in other parts of the unincorporated areas of the county and more affluent areas. It's expected about the same number. And the other thing I heard a lot about, like what I understood is maybe like discussion from the point of like, like have more houses or more apartments or more housing developed in the city. But as a homeowner, I think that for me it's very important to have spaces for houses where we have our space, we have our yard, that we all are here like in our house, and we have parking. I don't know, I'm a North Richmond resident, and I don't know how many of you are, or are you faced that we already dealing with a lot of some issues about parking. So when I think about this overcrowded neighborhood, it's like with those a lot of constructions are overcrowded. It just doesn't feel like it will be like that great for us as that to have. So I hope I don't forget. Yeah, so far is what I have, my input, that I would like to see, like spaces where we don't just leave it open to anybody who can come and, buy places for cheap and make, those big buildings, and then we'll still be, like equity is like, just it resumes to a small apartment or small place to live. Thank you. I hope I made sense.
I saw I thought I saw Eleanor, but I have Supervisor Joy, then I have you, Latifa, after that.
I just wanted to make one observation on this issue about whether there should be housing north of the creek. One thing I've heard from the community as well is the desire for well-paying jobs. And I know one of the visions we've thought about is creating a green zone for clean energy jobs. There's not a lot of clean industrial sites, industrially zoned land on large parcels, which could allow some of the new energy economy and clean businesses to locate and try to bring in good jobs. I think if we're indeed establishing that as a policy or a goal and trying to establish clean, green energy jobs for North Richmond and Richmond, building housing north of the creek in that industrial area is going to interfere with that goal. Because I think having housing next to clean industrial sites, when I say clean businesses, I think will just make it harder to bring them to North Richmond. So I just wanted to make that observation, which is, I think, an argument for not having housing north of the creek. And because I think we have to be clear, if the goal is that land which is currently zoned industrial, if the goal is to turn that into a green energy zone, there's an assembly member from Contra Costa, Tim Grayson, and he had a bill passed to create a sort of a a green energy zone in Contra Costa, which maybe we can argue for, get tax credits for, to attract businesses with good paying jobs for residents. We want to sort of be conscious about that strategy and not make it harder by putting housing next to them. So I'm only talking the area now that's north of the creek that's currently zoned industrial. Well, I don't know if you have any comments about that, but I just wanted to make that observation.
No, I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Latifa.
Couple things. I wanted to just kind of piggyback on what Miss Annie mentioned. Yeah, I think single family homes are really important. Single family homes with yards, and the opportunity for home ownership. I believe Chair Moore mentioned that. Yeah, so for first time home buyers, yeah, so definitely you want to have a balance, and yeah, between homeowner, those that want to buy or may want to buy in the future, and then yeah, so I think there definitely needs to be a balance. And then also I wanted to ask you about, so there were three sections that you mentioned at the beginning, but I didn't see the sustainability as part of that. And I was just wondering if, my hope is that in the North Richmond profile that these different things will be cross-referenced. So you have the land use, you have the climate portion. I think sustainability needs to be part of that, so that when you're looking at one, you could look at one document for everything, and that way, yeah. So we have, several concerns here with the brownfields and everything. So if everything could be just addressed in one document, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. I mentioned that when the board directed our department to update the general plan, there were 4 themes: environmental justice, economic development, community health, and sustainability that will be woven through the document. And each one will, when we have a policy or an action that addresses one or more of those, we actually have little icons that signify that, so people can look at it and say, oh, this is an environmental justice policy, or a sustainability or community health policy. And so we're going to, in the general plan, one of the appendices will be where they're all compiled in one place. So you will be able to just easily flip to one section of the general plan, say, oh, I want to see everything that has to do with sustainability, and here they will all be in one place.
Okay, Eleanor.
Yes, I'm in agreement for the single family homes. I want to be sure that those are put in. And also I want to ask Tony if he's still on. Is there still a couple of 1 or 2 units that will be designated for programs? Is that still in the plan, or am I off base here about what you're talking about? Is that still part of the plan? For the family homes, for the single family home, for the single, you know what I'm talking, scattered sites.
Scattered sites.
For the scattered sites, right. So there, as you know, there's restrictive covenants on all of those units that were going to be sold below market. The restrictive covenant limits that to affordable housing only. So, I'm not quite sure what you mean by programs, but
once when you first did the announcement, you said there would be at least 1 or 2 of the scattered sites that can be used for programs, for a program. Like I was talking about a resource center. Later on, Dr. Clark talked about a museum. So I'm trying to find out, is there still
those?
something?
Yeah, anything that has a restrictive covenant has to be restricted to affordable housing. But the other units, the regular market rate units, they can be done. They can be used for whatever purposes you want.
So the under market rate, there's none that can be used for that. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, so because that wasn't what was said at first.
It wasn't.
Right, and the restrictive covenants came in after all that. And again,
Okay.
you know, there's certain things that have to happen when you're selling units for below market as far as HUD's concerned. And you know, that's why they require the restrictive covenant. Now, at market rate sales, you know, the buyer can do what they wish to that. You know, there's always going to be a preference for them to, you know, make it housing and make it affordable housing, make it housing that somebody, preferably from the neighborhood, can actually purchase. But if they don't, you know, that's something that they have the right to do, assuming they pay market rate for it.
So what is the market rate right now for those homes? Do you know?
It's going to vary for everything. We did a preliminary evaluation, and for one of those duplexes, it was about $600,000, but that's just kind of the gross value. There's still about, you know, $300,000 to $400,000 worth of improvements that have to happen. It's about $150,000 to $200,000 per door. So on a duplex, you double that of improvements, because they're in such bad shape that you have to literally take them down to the studs and rebuild it. And in some cases, just bulldoze it and start over. You know, so there's some costs associated with bringing them up to a habitability standard that's going to pass. So if it's valued at 600 and you know there's 400 in cost, then the fair market value would be 200,000. So that's how that plays out.
Okay, thank you.
Tony, I had a quick question. So, so I know Dr. Clark had mentioned the properties on Fred Jackson Way and Market as wanting to have a museum there. So, would is there an opportunity to waive the restrictive covenant for something like that? No,
Not on the below market stuff. You know, like I said, on the market sales, it won't come with a restrictive covenant, so you can do whatever you want to it. But on the below market ones, they have to go to affordable housing purposes.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any hands. One question, Will, was give me an example of how you see economic development being woven into the process. What does that look like?
The process or the plan?
Well, you can start with the process and go with the plan. I just want to see how it goes in there.
Well, so the existing general plan says almost nothing about economic development either. So yeah, I mean, it's a very outdated document. So we have policy language in there now, you know, about for example, supporting you know, workforce training and workforce development, supporting, you know, economic development is, I mean, has all sorts of things that are part of it, right? So affordable housing, having, you know, housing available for the workforce is part of it. Having education for the workforce is part of it. Having transportation options for the workforce is part of it. So in the stronger communities element, and that's why these themes, the board didn't say make an element, you know, a chapter for each one. It's because they kind of go all over the different topics in the general plan. So I'm going to pull up the economic development section of the stronger communities element, and I'll actually throw a link in the chat too to this element, so I can give you an idea of some of the policy language that's in there now related to economic development. Let's see. So we have it's broken down into two sections, and it's actually called economic empowerment in the general plan. So the first is workforce development. So a goal is access to an expansion of job training opportunities and economic resources that residents in impacted communities. This is the SB 1000 environmental justice side of it. In impacted communities can acquire safe jobs, earn a living wage to support their families, and build shared prosperity. So that's a goal. So Then, for example, the first policy supports schools, training programs, the Workforce Development Board, and other institutions whose mission it is to develop and enhance local workforce skills. Another policy, encourage more daycares, preschools, and early childhood development centers to make childcare more viable and affordable to working families. I mean, that's a huge one, right? Childcare. Promote entrepreneurship, innovation, and locally owned businesses and enterprises, especially ethnic, minority, and immigrant entrepreneurship, for the purpose of improving economic self-sufficiency and stability, including through outreach efforts to local small business owners while minimizing permitting barriers. So that last part of that one, especially minimizing permitting barriers. So the way that it comes to that it'll operate, I mean, these are directives, right? So when people come in, say they want to open a business in Contra Costa County, for example, they could read these and see, is this a place that is, supports me, right? That is fertile ground, so to speak, or are they, have they closed the door to business? Is this a place that supports, training the workforce that I would need for my business? And that's on the, kind of the applicant side, the people looking for a place to establish a business. Then there's the, the county side, the permitting side, right? Where these are the directives to the county staff, to the county decision makers, like the zoning administrator or the planning commissioner, the board of supervisors, that, that we're going to promote entrepreneurship. This one, policy P 8.4. It is the county's policy to promote entrepreneurship, innovation, and locally owned business. So that when someone comes in with a locally owned business, really, I mean, there should be a hedge towards approving it. In my experience, my 21 years at the county, when I started, it was basically, it's almost like deny is the default, right? You have to show us that whatever it is that you have, a business or housing development or whatever, should be approved. Well, this is setting a different tone, right? It's that no, when someone comes in, and I mean, it is now the county's stated policy to promote this sort of business, or as another one says, welcome businesses in the clean energy sector, for example. That's another policy. So that, it's sort of like a set of rules that everyone's going to play by, that everyone gets to see, whether it's the community members, so they understand, okay, if someone proposes something in our community, this is the rules that we're all playing by, or the developer or the county. And so, it when we have an actual application, right? Someone applies for business. We look at two main things. Is it consistent with the general plan? Is it consistent with the zoning? So when you have statements in the general plan saying some of the things I read, then we look at that and say, well, does the business check these boxes or not? And businesses that don't, we could deny the permit. That was the workforce development part. Under business and innovation, we have, support business retention, expansion, and attraction efforts that diversify and strengthen the economy with special emphasis on sustainable, clean, and green businesses. So, that's broadcasting. This is the kind of business that Contra Costa County is looking for. Work collaboratively with cities and other local agencies to leverage Contra Costa County's competitive assets and elevate the county's role in the economic and cultural growth of the Bay Area in California. So, that one is basically saying, don't look at all the cities in the county as opponents or entities that you're in competition with. Work with them collectively to lift all of Contra Costa up, right? Not I get mine and you don't get yours type attitude. And then another one, and I could go on and on. I mean, there are many of these, but maintain a well-balanced regulatory environment that facilitates business investment and expansion while addressing community concerns about potential impacts. And that's a huge one, right? Because this is what we run into, this old general plan, this older zoning code. It just stifles business. It stifles economic development. It shouldn't be it should be clear to people generally walking in the door whether their business is the kind that we welcome here or not. And, we have these old rules, and we just had one in Crockett where someone wanted to open a business, and because our rules are so old and antiquated, they got stuck in the bureaucratic morass and they ended up opening their business in Alameda, from what I hear. So, I mean, it was kind of an open-ended question. I've given a kind of rambling answer, but what it is that once you have these goals in place and these policies in place, the rules and the expectations, then as people are coming in the door, they'll know what the county expects. The community will know what everyone expects for the county decision makers and for their community, and then the decision makers know what is expected of them as far as what to approve and what not to.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summation. John, I might want to ask you this because I didn't know, Eleanor, if that was your hand from last time, but I'll get right back to you. So one of the things that John's been successful is doing what you said about getting green businesses here, but also at the same time getting commitments from the businesses come in to basically have a commitment to hire locally. And so I don't know that we have a lot of teeth in there, or if there's a pool of funds that an additional fee they could pay into, like they do. Or I mean, is this the time where you look at different type of fees that go into this? So I'm just throwing it out there, John.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know originally we had more teeth when this was part of redevelopment. Remember, Don? So yeah, I mean, let me just say the community benefit we've been able to negotiate has been just me putting pressure on the applicants and say, so like, the Centerpoint project has $500,000 for a solar project to benefit North Richmond, and has $500,000 for a health related project. So Will, knowing that, what would be the best language to be able to encourage community benefit payments? I mean, obviously we have an area of benefit that does extract or impose transportation funding to do improvements to the transportation network in North Richmond. And I think people are paying millions of dollars into that. But what about, this idea, of, as Don says, of community benefit for North Richmond, as well as, we used to have a first source hiring agreement, as Don recalls, during redevelopment. So those two areas, local hiring and community benefit, whatever the strongest language is to support us basically leveraging that language to negotiate those.
So we have a policy at the beginning of the Stronger Communities element that speaks to CBAs, community benefits agreements, about negotiating them with the community and the applicant. It says the primary objective of these community benefits agreements is to mitigate project impacts to the greatest extent feasible, which could include mitigations exceeding the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. Secondarily, to compensate for impacts that cannot be fully mitigated, these CBAs should secure community benefits that exceed the inherent project benefits and support the community objectives identified in the community profile. So, basically saying that, because what we hear a lot, right, is this argument that, well, I'm bringing business here, and yeah, I might have dirty trucks, or I might have this impact or that impact, but I'm bringing jobs, and I'm raising the property value, and so this is a good thing. And so, and so that's what that language is about in there, about going beyond the inherent benefits, because no one can argue that, yeah, okay, well, you improve the land, you do raise the property value and put more tax money in the county coffers. You are going to bring some jobs, but that doesn't necessarily make up for the impact that you can bring to the community. So that's the policy about community benefit agreements. And there is one, and I have to find it. I don't recall if it's in the Stronger Communities element, but there is one about first source hiring. We can't require someone to hire from the local community, but we can kind of push them in that direction. But I have to find it.
Yeah, all we're looking for is basically policies to support our ability to do this. And, we've been successful, like, the FedEx project. We've got some, again, $500,000 for solar projects in North Richmond. So, we've just sort of done this on our own, and the more language we can have in the general plan, the better. So
Yeah.
consider that sort of, something we can do here.
Well, I found it here. It's an action under economic empowerment. It says establish a first source hiring program requiring developers, contractors, and employers to use good faith efforts toward employing residents of impacted communities with emphasis on residents who are economically disadvantaged.
Can you go any stronger than good faith effort?
Happy to find something that's stronger that isn't a requirement.
And what
We
about
modeled-
what about community benefit language?
We modeled that after San Francisco's. The community benefit language, Supervisor Joya. Yeah, going back to that one. But what about that one?
Having strong language to linking community benefit to sort of the stated goals for the community.
Well, so in that policy, it actually says that the CBAs should secure community benefits that exceed the inherent project benefits and support the community objectives identified in the community profile. So the community profile should articulate what the community desires, and then that policy would support getting funding.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's good. I mean, if you think, we're just asking you to come up with the strongest language possible to support. And part of it is, is something about, strongly encouraging the applicant to negotiate a community benefit agreement. I think that's at least for the large projects, which is what we've been doing in practice.
Yeah.
We haven't needed the language, but obviously the language helps.
Yeah.
And where are you putting the policy? This is more countywide. Speaking of that, on sort of having zero emission operations at the facility. Where is that being included? Or because I know we've had some language for North Richmond that we put in before. It's going to be strengthened, and I just want to see that language.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing this in other areas too.
It's in the health and safety element in the air quality section. And it's here. This is the one that we worked with you through the sustainability committee on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's in the health and safety element, policy 1.7. This is the one with really that incorporates the language, the things that you've been able to achieve about adequate parking and on-site, provide adequate on-site EV parking, provide electrified loading docks, use heavy-duty trucks that are model year 2014 or later and expedite transition.
We're more than that now. Remember, it's basically requiring zero emission fleets.
Then the next one is use a clean fleet of delivery vehicles as they become commercially available no later than 2025.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later about that language. We'll work on that. I think we have that's good. We have that in there. I think there's ways to make it even stronger now. So let's just earmark that you and I have a discussion about strengthening that language.
That sounds good.
Send me the existing language. I'll pull out some other stuff and we'll figure out how to even make that stronger.
Okay.
And that applies to all development, not just North Richmond now?
This is, remember we talked, it's all commercial industrial projects exceeding 75,000 square feet.
How many square feet?
75,000.
Okay, we'll change all that to make it more. Let's just maybe spend some time to talk about that separately.
Okay.
Okay, Eleanor, then I have
Yes.
Latifah, then I have Annie. Go ahead, Eleanor.
One question first. The first question is, are the scattered sites, some of them, are they yet going for $1? Tony, I think.
Oh,
I guess that's for Tony.
Yeah, there's 28 units or 14 duplexes and 4 single-family dwellings going for $1 to nonprofit developers.
Okay, so I'm a nonprofit. What else? What was the other question? Is there any, they were talking about development right now, but is there any resources that, you know, that we can bring to North Richmond through this progress? Is there like, is there any resource like a building that's going to be like, no resource center? You just said we can't do that in the scattered sites. And you said we can't do the museum in the scattered sites.
So Eleanor, you know what, we're gonna have Tony back again. We want to keep this on the general plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to try and
Okay, I wanted to ask one question, Supervisor Joya. Do you have the power to change the plan like a little bit to at least allow the museum to come into North Richmond, if you have any power to do that?
Well, I mean, in terms of general plan designation, I mean, and the question is where, I mean, ultimately, where's the right location? What general plan designations would allow a museum cultural facility, Will?
Typically, that's the public and semi-public designation. You know, who owns it partially determines that. I mean, we have a museum out in the eastern part of the county where it's the designation is agricultural lands. It's a museum about the kind of rural agricultural history of that part of the county. So there's not one single one, but I think the default would be the public, semi-public.
And which are the public, semi-public sites that we have out there?
In North Richmond?
Yeah.
Let me bring up the map here.
And we're talking really south of the creek, probably, because I'm not sure we'd put a museum up in the middle of the industrial area. It'd be more in the residential area.
Yeah. The other designation could be parks and recreation. You know, sometimes you have museums, I mean, like a Golden Gate Park, right? So it's not unusual to have a museum or cultural facility in a park. Let me get the map up here. South of the creek, there are only two. Well, they're little, and I don't know what these facilities are.
Church, one church, McLaughlin Temple. It has a museum. It has a church museum. McLaughlin Temple does.
The Center for Health would be one, probably.
And I think, Eleanor, there's nothing that prevents if a site is obtained later on or a museum. I mean, you know, there's nothing that prevents changing the general plan to allow that if the site is obtained. And maybe, so let me ask this larger question rather than figure a site. Is there a policy? I think North Richmond has expressed a desire to have a cultural assets in the community, whether it's music, a museum. So how can that be put in policies or the profile? That I think, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about celebrating the sort of the music history in North Richmond, the clubs that were there. So that may make some sense as language that demonstrates or expresses the community's interest in a cultural center, whether it's a museum or music or whatever, in some language.
Yeah, so the sites that currently have the designation are the Senior Center at 5th and Silver, and the Contra Costa Health Services there at Chesley and Fred Jackson. As far as that question, Supervisor, the North Richmond profile, I think, is the most extensive one. There was a lot of great input that we got from people. And I am pretty confident that this is addressed already.
Yeah.
But let me find it.
I'm just pulling it up right now too. Quick, see who finds it quicker. I'm pulling it up off of our website and looking for the documents.
Here we go.
Here.
It's policy 4, coordinate with local nonprofits to celebrate the history of diversity in North Richmond, such as through community events and public art. That's one. I mean, we could add through music, like you just mentioned.
I think you should add through music. And also, I think the community is looking for a venue. Where that is, I don't think we have to determine where that venue is today, because that limits us. But the policy of supporting a venue to express that.
Well, and the first action is seek funding to construct a new community center in North Richmond. This serves youth and families and support programming that promotes employment opportunities and workforce development. So, that's not so prescriptive that says what has to be in the community center, but that's certainly the kind of place that could.
Maybe you call it community and cultural center.
Oh, there you go. That's a good suggestion.
Community and cultural. So you're covering community and or basically can be both.
Yes.
Okay.
This is Cynthia. I know I'm out of line, but I just want to make sure that Eleanor's question is being understood. I think Eleanor wants to know if she purchased a scattered site, could somebody overrule that housing thing and she can put her resource center there?
Yeah, well, let me say this. I think there's two issues here. There's the issue of general plan and zoning. And I don't think we have to identify a site for that. But if you're talking specifically about the scattered sites, I will defer to Tony because those are owned by the housing authority and have restrictions by HUD of what they can do with those sites. So that's separate than a zoning general plan issue. So I will turn it over to Tony to answer that.
Can I just say something right quick, Supervisor? I was listening to what you were saying, and I think that would go better than me trying to purchase a site. If you all can fit in that music and the background of the history is what Dr. Clark wanted. So I think if you all can designate someplace, then that would.
Right. We can all come together and figure out, Eleanor, where's the right site? What makes sense? And put a policy that the community supports that. Okay. And now, as to the specifics of whether the scattered sites are eligible for that type of use, because of HUD restrictions, we may not, but Tony can answer that later or now,
Yeah, I mean, I could address it real quick here. I've already kind of pointed out that, the restrictive covenant keeps us from developing below market sales for anything but affordable housing. But remember, there's going to be a couple of other options. One of them is the private market sales. The other option is we, kind of include it into the main campus RFP when we get a developer or two who want to, win a contract to build housing on that site and have kind of an added public benefit concept rolled into that, where they can build a museum somewhere else in the neighborhood. Doesn't necessarily have to be on that site, but in order for them to win that contract, they would sweeten the pot, if you will, with something like that, or like a Boys and Girls Club, or another Head Start Center, or anything that has a desired need or want for the community, so that you get something out of it, not just the developer gets to build housing and reap in all this profit from renting these units and selling the units or whatever they're going to do. There are other options here, so don't lose focus on just because you can't do it on this that it's a lost cause. There are other options.
I think it's a great idea that since that's going to be a large development, your RFP can actually say, we want to see some proposal working with the community that has some type of either on-site or off-site. It could be on the site or off the site, kind of a community amenity, whether it's a music club or a museum or a childcare center or whatever it is, sort of at the time that the community would most support as part of that development.
Or green space, or parks, or anything like that.
Okay, Latifa, I saw you next, and I have you, Annie, after that.
Okay, so a couple things. Well, you're talking about businesses and entrepreneurship, and it sounds as though Well, I'm not sure. Do you already have something in there for micro businesses and maybe, yeah, because it sounds as though it's speaking to maybe people coming from the outside with businesses and not necessarily people in the community that may want to start businesses. So maybe have something in there about micro businesses and then training to be able to scale the business if that's the goal. And also, Supervisor Joya, you had mentioned earlier this year about working with the community on community benefit agreements. So I know, like with the county, you know, they have certain things that they do, I guess maybe having to do with the interests are not necessarily the same as the community. And so I was wondering if you were still going to revisit that. And maybe you just touched on that with the developments, but I think really just hearing from the community about what they want to see. And I think it would go a long way to have that discussion.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to define what the community benefit would be, other than some policy that allows us to do what we can to negotiate a community benefit agreement to achieve community goals. And I think the policies regarding North Richmond, hopefully will can summarize them, reflect community goals. And so we would negotiate I mean, what we didn't have any policies to negotiate community benefit for solar project for North Richmond and health benefits. And the reason we did both of those is there was a nexus, which we have to make sure there's a nexus to the project, because they were building, a warehouse with electric trucks. And so, we did the solar because the solar produces the electricity for their site, and then we can create solar benefit for residents in North Richmond, and then health benefits, right? But that doesn't mean that in the future, the community benefit can't have benefit other things as reflected in the community policies for North Richmond. And I know, Will, you read before what some of those policies or values are for the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a policy that I think addresses this. It doesn't say micro businesses specifically, but it does say support workforce development and wealth building programs for local residents and locally owned businesses, cooperatives, and other uses offering benefits to the community, such as a grocery store or community kitchen. And we could, add other uses as examples, but I don't know, does that address the
Yeah, that's a
concern?
good start. Yeah, that's a good start. And then the last thing is that I know when I spoke with you earlier this year, Will, you talked about, well, I think Kat had brought up what is it that we can do that we don't always have to fight or push back every time a development comes in. And you mentioned the sustainability document. So that's still like top of mind for me. So I'm hoping that, and I think you mentioned it a little bit today, but I just want to make sure that that's like, yeah, because it seems like we have to always push back when we have these developments come in that are not necessarily so great for us. And so even like with the money, like, oh, well, the solar project or this, the main thing really is the overall health. So if there's a way just not to have certain things come in further burden the community, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Annie.
And
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Will.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that what the supervisor has discussed and articulated, and it's that the difficulty when we talk about, the difficulty in pushing back is that when we don't have anything, when we don't have policy language, then it is hard to, you don't have much to stand on. I think the supervisor has been really successful in getting these businesses to step up to the plate. The idea with a lot of this is that we do put it all in writing, so that it isn't so much pushing back anymore. It's that if you want to come here, this is what we expect. And if you don't fulfill this, you don't come. Is that fair to say, Supervisor?
Yeah, like, right now, the FedEx facility that's being built on Par in the Parkway, there was, at the time we approved that, there was absolutely no general plan policy that would have forced them to build eventually an all-electric truck facility, other than my telling them, I'm not going to approve a project that doesn't have that. And so that was just me telling them that. It wasn't in the general, and our planning folks says, you've got to do this. There's no policy. We can't tell them it has to be an electric fleet. So, but we did it, and we got money out of it too. So I think that works sometimes, but it depends who the applicant is. And we want to put as much as we can in policy to give us the ability to be on more solid ground to do those kinds of things. I think that's really what it's about. I told the FedEx, I said, North Richmond's an AB 617 community. We don't want more diesel trucks. We did a moratorium, of course, then after to stop any more of those developments. But I think the more we can do policies, the better off we are.
And I would just say, the general plan has hundreds of policies and actions. And so we're only scratching the surface here. There are many, many more that go into a lot of these issues in greater depth.
Okay, Annie.
Thank you. Real quick, I'm going back to where we spoke about inviting the first source hiring and the language there. I have a problem, and since we've come such a long way since we've done this general plan over the years, almost a couple of decades. One of the things that language is always talking about disadvantage. I think we're out of that disadvantage piece because we have grown so much, and to introduce and continue to say such a disadvantage, people have gone to school, they have come back, and they have traveled outside of their community, this community, in order to have a job. Why keep labeling disadvantage and just say local residents at this point, instead of just keep calling them disadvantaged? Let's take that negativity out of disadvantage. Just for example, I've traveled out, I went to school, I graduated from college, and we have individuals now that are at home and have graduated from college. They have to travel outward in order to get a job. I think it'd be more attractive in that wording if we just would say local residents, in order to make it attractive, instead of just keep saying disadvantage. You keep saying disadvantage, that kind of put a cap on their education.
Yeah.
And I'm tired
of
it.
And let me just say, I am so glad. I am
just tired of
so glad you raised this, Annie, because I was in a meeting recently, and we need to talk. There has been now, that is a term that is really now out of style and not accurate to use generally. And I'm beginning to hear other terms, and we should come up with a better term that describes terminology. Yes, and whether it's there are communities that are highly impacted, or they're under-resourced, or we need to come up with a term that replaces disadvantage. I couldn't agree more with Annie, and I was meaning to. I've got to pull out some notes because I was at some meeting where I heard other terms being used. And we would have to consistently change that term in our general plan.
So we have the community profile. I mentioned that it was the profiles were the first documents we produced. That's why it still says disadvantage. The term we use now is impacted. And so it's through all of our environmental justice language throughout the whole rest of the general plan, it says impacted communities. So we just, in those edits that I was talking about earlier that we're doing right now, disadvantage will be gone. That's the term in state law, and that's why it said that back then in 2018, or 2019 when we wrote these, but we've changed it to impacted everywhere else already.
Yeah, so that's one term I've heard used. Another has been depending on the context, another is under-resourced. Another is, I'm trying to look here what some of the other terms were. I think Cal and Virus Screen uses also communities disproportionately burdened, disproportionately impacted. So yeah, I mean, there's impacted, disproportionately impacted, under-resourced. So I think, yes, figuring out that right term and impact is a possible one, or underserved. There's a lot of different terms depending on the context that are used.
The reason we chose impacted is actually suggested by a community member, I think in Bay Point. And one of the reasons we liked it for a couple reasons. It's short, it's not a mouthful. You know, some of these terms you hear, they are kind of a mouthful, but it also implies that something external forces have acted on these communities and that can be reversed, that this isn't inherent, that these issues aren't inherent to the community. It's the result of things of like I said, external forces, and therefore can be changed.
So then we would use that consistently in the general plan instead of disadvantaged.
It is everywhere else except in the community profiles. It's already changed to that.
Okay.
The only place you'll find it now is in these profiles from 2019.
Annie, what's your sense of the term impacted?
That's more broader. You know, it's not as negative. You know, it's not as negative. For what is going on now in the world, you're looking at the environment, you know, you're looking at different, you know, things that are coming up in people's lives. It's more broader. The word is more broader than just looking at the negative disadvantage. You hear disadvantage, it's just a cutoff, you know, it's negative, you know, it just boom.
So impacted works for you, Annie?
It does work. Yeah, I won't get all shook out of shape when I hear, I won't freeze up, you know, but yes, that's better, much better.
All right. Well, look, we reached our time. I don't know if this is sufficient. John, I don't, if your opinion is, do we need to extend it, or are we pretty good here?
I'm open for staying as long as you all want to give input to Will, and how long is Will is available.
You know, the Phillies are on right now, Supervisor. But
yeah, but there's no California.
You want to come back?
No. It's okay. It's okay. We can keep going.
Right, the game's over. It's 7-0 Phillies in the 6th inning. That's what it says. So who cares?
All right. Any other comments or questions? Eleanor, is your hand up again, or you just didn't put it down?
No, it's not up. Thank you. Just
Okay.
I don't know where to put it down.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Going once. Oh, there it is.
Jorge, yeah.
Go ahead, Jorge.
Hi everyone. So I actually did I studied rhetoric in my undergrad, and that's actually my major. And so one of the things that it really makes an impact is really the context of how we use the words, right? And so if we want to propose, like, let's say a policy, and we want to make sure that it catches people in power's attention, I think this advantage is the thing that people, like you said, right? It makes you feel a certain type of way. And so sometimes these words generate those types of feelings to catch people's attention. However, I agree with you. I think that it really comes down to how we use these words and depending on the context, because I'd rather prefer a different word too, right? Because I live in this area too, and I don't want to be considered disadvantaged. However, we are disadvantaged compared to the other part of Contra Costa County and other parts of California. So I think this is a great topic that came up. I think, again, just in conclusion, that it really depends on the context that we're writing these words. So whether it's a policy, public policy issue, or if it's a community thing, but I know that it definitely.
How much it costs from here? Just kind of way.
Yeah, some of the other terms I've heard to have been under-resourced and underserved, right?
Eleanor, can you mute? There you go. Thanks.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments? Make sure I get everybody on the screen. Questions? Comments? All right. Going once, going twice, going 3 times, gone. So thank you so much, Will, for coming in your presentation.
Welcome.
John, would you like to have the final comments before we close?
No, other than I really appreciate, this was really great. I think great input, great discussion. And I know Will's been really good about translating community voice into the policies. And I know we're looking forward to seeing the redraft of the profile. And to say, I know we're going to have a meeting hopefully soon with the Housing Authority, because we're all anxious to get that RFQ out, whatever it's going to be called, for the under market rate sites, below market rate. We really want to move forward with that. So no, and if we need any more updates, we'll have them. And I'll just want to close with this. Some of the policies that we've put in on sustainability and health countywide, some of those policies have started in North Richmond.
All right. And with that, thank you, everybody. And
Don, I think you had a couple of hands. Tony,
no,
Cynthia?
no, I had some claps and some
No, we were
approves
just
of the
clapping.
meeting. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So again, thank everybody, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.